Thank you for tuning in to the MBL Network, and you're watching the MBL Blitz.
What's going on, MBL? Welcome to a special live episode of the MBL Blitz podcast. As always, I'm your host, TFA, and with me today is not only my co-host, Chunky, but a very special guest is joining us today, who just happens to be the network director of the MBL. OSU, are you excited to be joining us here for this pre-mock draft special?
Of course I'm excited. First time on the MBL Blitz podcast. I'm just making my rounds, guys. I'm the media slut of the MBL.
Yeah, we like it how you get around over here, but we're really happy to have you on the show tonight. Both Gub and Joe were not able to make it, but that's okay. They got their work in, and they got their mock drafts in just in time for the Season 27 draft. So the three of us are going to go ahead and analyze who we think is going where, discuss a little bit about the upcoming draft class. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. We're going to have the first 8 picks here up on the screen for you. You see where Joe and Gub went with these picks. Obviously, the most interesting thing here is the #1 overall pick. That Jacksonville Jaguar team, guys, that's a team that coming into this cycle, I did not think that that was a team that was going to need a whole lot. It looks like they could draft, 2 or 3 full teams and still have a lot of work to do. Chunky, where do you think that the Jaguars are going to go to start off this draft?
I definitely think they go quarterback. You look at their wide receiver core, it's pretty solid over there. You got Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns and Marquise Lee, and you have Blake Bortles at quarterback, and I don't think there's any way that you don't go quarterback here with the first pick.
OSU, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I think absolutely the biggest need for this team is quarterback. I know a lot of people are talking about Calvin Patrick, the wide receiver, being the top player in the draft, and if the Jaguars do decide to go with the best overall player, it is Calvin Patrick, but I counter with they have great wide receivers. The problem is they got nobody to throw it to them. They need to go quarterback. They need to start building for the future.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think wide receiver at this position would be a little bit of a mistake. You've got all those receivers over there, like Chunky said. While we're on the topic of Calvin Patrick, let's go ahead and take a look at him a little bit deeper. You see those combine times up on the screen, that 4.39 second 40-yard dash. This guy is a big playmaker at the wide receiver spot. He reminds me a lot of Julio Jones. Same 40 time for Julio Jones as Calvin Patrick. This guy's just a guy that's going to go deep down the field, go up and get the ball. He's going to overpower you, and he's a good route runner. He's a guy that's going to come in and immediately be an impact player. Where do you see Calvin Patrick going, Chunky?
I definitely see him going second overall because the Eagles just lost their #1 receiver in Alshon Jeffrey, and I don't see how there's any way you can pass up on a receiver of this caliber, a guy who's the best receiver Georgia's had since A.J. Green. And like you said, you compare him to Julio Jones, and getting those types of comparisons, I don't see how there's any way he falls past the second pick.
Now, OSU, how angry do you think the Eagles will be if the Jaguars do go ahead and take Calvin Patrick? You've got to assume that the Eagles have their eye on Patrick, and that's the guy that they want. What do you think they're going to do if he's already gone?
Well, here's the answer. Would they be mad? I absolutely think so. But let's just play a little what-if scenario. Let's say the Jaguars do go crazy and don't go quarterback. They think, I don't know, any one of the massive quarterbacks they've had start is their quarterback of the future. Then you look at Daniel Shirley, the quarterback, falling to the Eagles. And let me just throw some stats at you. Carson Wentz last year only completed 53% of his passes. He threw 6 touchdowns and 34 interceptions. I think the Eagles then seriously question whether Carson Wentz, who was drafted 2 2 years ago is really the answer at quarterback, or maybe they go and take a guy like Daniel Shirley, who I think can be a very good quarterback here in the MBL, draft him, put him behind Wentz for a year, and then you have your quarterback of the future if Wentz's 6 touchdown, 34 interceptions really where he's going to be.
Yeah, I think that with the Eagles, it's a little bit more the case of the owner needs more of a new pair of glasses, maybe bifocals at this point, as opposed to a new quarterback. But it will be interesting to see if they do go quarterback, if Shirley actually does fall to them. Rounding out, look at the rest of this round here. This is a draft that I thought there were going to be a lot of quarterbacks that were going to go very early on. You've got a lot of teams here. You look at it top to bottom here, 1 through 8. The Jags need a quarterback. The Eagles, like you said, could possibly need a quarterback. The Bengals could use a quarterback. The Broncos definitely need a quarterback. Chad Kelly is not the answer over there. I don't know why they ever went with him. 49ers need a quarterback. So you're looking up here. I think there could be a potential scenario where we get 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the first 5 picks. Out of the quarterbacks you see here, out of Shirley, Stewart, Bonham, which one of these guys do you think is going to come in and make the biggest impact right away?
I think definitely the answer is it's Shirley. It's got to be Shirley. He's the most talented quarterback in the pack. And I think the bigger thing is if Shirley goes where we think he's going to go, which is to the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is where they should go, and I'm looking at you unisolated, you take that quarterback, you take him right now. Now you got a quarterback in Daniel Shirley coming into Jacksonville with proven wide receivers, and that's the biggest thing that he's going to have going for him is having a wide receiving core and an offensive line that I think will be much better than they were last year. And then, perhaps Leonard Fournette will stay healthier than 2 games a year.
Yeah, and that's the key over there in Jacksonville. If they can get the running game going, I mean, they should have no problem at all. Let's go ahead, though. If Shirley's going to be the top quarterback taken, let's go ahead and look at the other quarterbacks here in the first round. 2 specifically that I want to look at. That's going to be Bonham and Stewart. We've got their combine comparison here on the screen. Very similar quarterbacks. If you look at them overall in terms of their athletic abilities, they're not the fastest guy. These are guys that aren't going to go out and kind of do the hop special. They're not going to be the guys that are rolling out of the pocket and trying to throw the ball deep down the field. These are going to be guys that are going to stand in the pocket and make the throws down the field. And I think that they need to go to a team that allows them to do that. OSU, what are your thoughts? Do you think, which one of these teams do you think can benefit the most from one of these quarterbacks that's going to be able to stand in the pocket? Would you say it's, the Broncos, the 49ers, or maybe the Bengals?
Well, I think the easy answer, of course, is the Cincinnati Bengals because of one guy by the name of A.J. Green. And I think that's where the Broncos and the 49ers have a lot of work to do, especially offensively, is making sure that their wide receiving core and their running game is something they can work with. I think Cincinnati is probably, personnel-wise, the best fit, but don't sleep on the San Francisco 49ers if for no reason other than look, they have the defending Super Bowl champions, and I don't know how I like saying the defending Super Bowl champions Seattle Seahawks, but even with them, that division is very up for grabs, especially if they can find some stability at the quarterback position. You might see San Francisco make a run at that division if they can get a quarterback in place.
Yeah, I definitely think that San Francisco is a better team than their record shows. And I think they're in a very good spot at number 5 to kind of get that quarterback of the future. There's so many of them in this draft that they kind of have their pick. Rounding out the top 8 here, the team that really intrigues me there at number 6 is the Packers. I think that this is a Packers team. I've heard that they could potentially go running back there at 6. And we're going to touch on DeMarco Riley a little bit later in the show. We're not going to get ahead of ourselves here. He's definitely going to be on the list to talk about. But I think that he definitely needs to go running back. If he doesn't go running back, I would be shocked. In Chunky, he's having a little bit of technical difficulties here, so he's not with us, so we can't really bash him to his face. But if he doesn't go, running back at 6, OSU, I think it's time to find a new Packers owner over there, huh?
Well, I see. Here's the problem, and this is my perpetual issue with halfbacks in the top 10. Is we've seen halfbacks go in many of our MBL seasons. And more often than not, these halfbacks are just fine. We saw a great halfback free agency class. If the Packers were serious about contending, they'd go out and sign a halfback who's out on the free agent market because nobody was going for halfbacks. The running game is where it is this year, and the way we're seeing offensive lines play, and especially that NFC North, okay? This is an NFC North that the Lions are down this year. The Vikings, I don't think the Vikings are as good as their record said. I think they're a good team. I don't think they're as good as their record showed. These are defenses that struggle to stop the run. I don't know if they need to go halfback, but I think if they didn't go out and sign one during free agency, I think maybe we need to put whoever that owner is, whoever the co-host of this podcast is and owner of the Green Bay Packers, put him in the sanitarium because there were plenty of halfbacks out there. There's no need to waste the number 6 pick on one.
Chucky, do you have anything to say to defend yourself now that you are back from the dead?
Well, now that I'm back, I'd like to say that I'm not necessarily looking at a halfback, but I'm more looking necessarily at best player available approach.
All right. I mean, I can respect that. 7th overall there to the Dolphins. You got a couple of defensive players, the first defensive players that we're going to see on our mock draft. Both of these guys are definitely guys that are going to be able to rush the passer and try to, create havoc in the passing game. I think that these are two very good options that could potentially go early. But at the same time, this is the MBL. We have a lot of guys that like to take those skill position players early. So if it's not a quarterback, a wide receiver, a cornerback, some of these linebackers and defensive ends can fall a little bit further. So it'll be interesting to see if they do fall, who might pick them up a little bit later. And then, of course, you've got the Browns down there, 8, who have a lot of picks in the first couple rounds of this draft. I think that they performed way better than anybody had expected them to. So seeing the Browns have a pick there at 8 that they didn't really have to go out and get, they had already had that. I think that's huge. I think the Browns are definitely going to be able to compete. I definitely don't think they're going to win the division, especially with, the Steelers that we've got over there. I mean, that team is just incredible until they get to the playoffs and, we know what happens there. But, they're not top 5, OSU, right? The Browns are not top 5. They're not top 5, but they are at 8. So, I mean, it's, they're working. They're working to get better.
Well, first of all, can we talk for a second about the name Adonis Milburn, how amazing that name is, and I'm going to name my child Adonis Milburn. But let's go to the Miami Dolphins. That's the team I want to focus on right now. This is a Miami Dolphins team that was a top 10 yardage defense. They were number 11 against the pass in the entire MBL, and they play in what I believe is the worst division in the MBL. I know the New England Patriots made the Super Bowl, but if anybody watched any of the Patriots games in the playoffs, that Patriots team is not very good. This Dolphins team went 5-11. Ryan Tannehill, I think, is talented enough to be a good quarterback here in the NBL. And there's no way Jay Ajayi has a worse year than he did this year when they were the second worst rushing offense in the league. I think if you're the Dolphins, defense is not where you need to go. I think the Dolphins need to look offensive line because they need to open up some holes for their talented running backs. And that was something they couldn't do at all this year.
Yeah, I would not argue that at all. I played the Dolphins defense, and they ran me over. I mean, it was not a good game for Cam Newton. I think he threw like 7 interceptions. We don't really want to talk about that game right now, but
woof.
Yeah, it was a bad day. So I agree with you completely. I think if they can get themselves an offensive line and give some of those weapons, they've got plenty of weapons on offense. I mean, that's a very good Dolphins team. I think they could definitely win some games, especially in that division. That division's wide open. Let's go ahead now and jump over to 9 through 16. This is where we get into kind of the middle of the pack. This is kind of your, we had pretty good seasons. We won some games. We lost some games, but we're not going to get a good pick. So, these are the guys that you want to see who falls. You don't really know who you're going to get. You've got a lot of guys on your board, I'm sure, at this point. But, you might have 5 or 6 guys on your board that you're really looking at, and you're just hoping that one of them falls. So right there at the Rams, they've got a couple linebackers, Adonis Milburn again, like you said, and Tremont Pierce. We're going to touch on him in a minute. He is a very, very good middle linebacker. He could potentially be like a Luke Kuechly-esque linebacker in the middle of the field for whoever gets him. The Buccaneers, same thing. You've got the linebackers going to them. So you've got a little bit of a linebacker run there. And then just kind of looking down the list, the Jets need a quarterback really bad. The Cardinals could kind of do with a quarterback. You've got a lot of teams here, again, that need quarterbacks. The Bills, they lost Tyrod Taylor. They need a quarterback. The Redskins no longer have Kirk Cousins, they need a quarterback. So it's a very quarterback-heavy group here at the beginning of the list. You see there, though, the Bills at 13 and 15. Do you think this is going to be a situation where we see a quarterback-wide receiver combo, Chunky?
I definitely think it's possible, but in my opinion, I don't see them going wide receiver. That's not to say that they couldn't. Anything can happen, and I could always be wrong, just like TFA and team selection. Anyways, but I definitely see them going quarterback for sure with the loss of Tyrod Taylor, and I think that's one pick that you can definitely lock in. But wide receiver is another possibility, so I think that's very possible, yes.
Wait, whoa. Don't see them going wide receiver. This was the second worst passing offense in the MBL. Their top wide receiver was Charles Clay, who had 46 catches and averaged 11.2 yards per catch. That is pathetic. They have to go wide receiver here because, again, as I said, that AFC least over there is wide open. There is no good team in that particular division. This draft could be where these teams separate themselves, and with the Bills having 2 picks in the top 15, if they don't go quarterback and wide receiver, I don't know. I think they might be looking at selling the team because this defense, their defense is so good at they were the number 5 yardage defense, number 6 against the pass. They just need to play better in the red zone. Offense is their problem. Quarterback, wide receiver has got to be the priority.
Yeah, especially in a draft that is so weak at wide receiver. I mean, if you don't get a wide receiver right there at the top, you're not going to have a whole lot of luck in the second or third round finding that kind of slot guy or maybe that number 2 guy. If they don't go for a receiver now, they're going to be waiting a whole nother season, and it's going to be a long season in Buffalo. The Jets do have, I did mention a team that needed a quarterback. The Jets did sign Kirk Cousins, so they won't be going quarterback, so it'll be interesting to see what they do. I'm guessing they might go wide receiver now, try to get a few more weapons over there in New York. And then a team that I really am interested in is the team there at 16. That's the Falcons. They're in my division. Doughboy had a little bit of a rough year, struggled a little bit. But I think he can go so many different areas. I don't think defense is the problem. He's always been a good defensive player. I think that he needs to give himself more weapons on the offense because, the points per game that he's been putting up this year, that's not going to win him a whole lot of games. What team here, Chunky, to you, has the most to gain if one of those top tier quarterbacks kind of fall out of the top 8 or 9 or even the top 10?
The Redskins, easily. I think with the loss of Kirk Cousins, and who else do they have at this point? I think they definitely have the most to gain in terms of if a top tier quarterback falls to them, because it'll help them out the most, and it'll definitely solve a big issue for them.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. You said the Redskins, okay? I'm going to go out on a limb and say that if the Redskins can get their future quarterback here in this draft, if they can get their franchise quarterback, I think that the Redskins will win the division this year. Hold on, hear me out, okay? The Giants might as well not even be there. I mean, they're not even, here at all. So I think they're going to beat them. I think that the Cowboys have a very, very good chance. I think it's going to be a race between the Cowboys and the Redskins. I think if the Redskins can get their quarterback, as long as they don't play any games on NBL Live, of course, because, I mean, if they play 2 games on NBL Live, that's basically a 2-game handicap. They're not winning those games. So, but I think the Redskins are going to win the division if they get a franchise quarterback here at 14.
I understand why you guys have so much fun on the MBL Blitz podcast, because you guys are drinking some strong-ass drinks over here. You think the Redskins are going to win that division? You seriously believe that? They had one of the worst defenses in the MBL, and they're going to go quarterback in this draft, so they're not going to fix that whatsoever. This is a team that's taken a step back because Kirk Cousins is a proven quarterback. You've said that Kirk Cousins switching teams makes the Jets have a quarterback for realsies this time as opposed to whatever they were doing last year. Kirk Cousins was a good quarterback, and the Redskins went, no, thank you. We'll take our chance on an unproven guy, and they're not going to fix their defense whatsoever, which gave up almost 100 yards per game on the ground. I know that there's been a lot of chatter about the New York Giants, and we talked about the Cowboys, how good they are, but this New York Giants team, any team with OBJ on it, if you have a bad defense, you're not stopping them. There's no chance the Redskins win the division this year.
I'm going out on a limb. I think the Redskins are definitely going to win the division this year. I've got a lot of faith.
Look, I'm just saying that limb is going to happen. What's going to happen to that limb is what happens when I climb trees. That limb's breaking. You're falling to the ground.
I sure hope not. Let's go ahead real quick before we move on. I told you we were going to talk about Tremont Pierce a little bit. Let's go ahead and pull up middle linebacker Tremont Pierce's card. This guy's out of Texas, came out his junior season. And this guy, like I was saying, this guy has the potential to be a Luke Kuechly-esque playmaker in the middle of the field immediately. He's quick. He's very, very, very athletic. I mean, he can accelerate immediately. Once he hits the holes, he's through it. He can play in coverage. He's really good at following receivers when they run their routes, and he's never going to let you away from him. You look at that A- tackle, A- hit power. This is a guy that is looking to wrap you up and then lay the wood when you're least expecting it. I think that this guy has potential to come into the league year one, and whoever's team he is on, immediately be a playmaker and make them 2 or 3 games better on the defensive side of the ball. Immediately.
Yeah, I agree. I think this guy is the biggest thing. I don't know how much he's going to be blitzing, especially at the middle linebacker position. This could be a guy who you could see transitioning maybe to an outside linebacker position if he's going to be blitzing a whole lot. But if he's playing in the middle, he's going to be what I've seen out of this guy out of Texas is he is so good in coverage because he is so quick. Look at those stats and how shifty he is. I think that's where he provides the most benefit and very Luke Kuechly-esque. Now, I don't want to call him the next Luke Kuechly because settle down, you got to actually do something in the MBL, but he is so fast and able to keep up with these quick tight ends and quick slot wide receivers. That's where I think he can be the most helpful.
Yeah, and I think in the MBL, I think that's a key player. If you can have a middle linebacker, somebody in the middle of the field who can drop out into coverage, who can, like you were saying, who can also handle the tight ends, the running backs, the potential maybe slot wide receiver, underneath especially, if he can kind of just patrol that middle of the field and make you scared to go to that specific area of the field, he really takes away a big part of teams' offenses. So I really think that he's going to have a good shot. And while we're talking about linebackers, we talked about the 2 outside linebackers a little bit earlier, Milbourne and Joseph. So let's go ahead and pull up their combine comparison. Because these are 2 guys that really had very good combines. You talked about Milbourne earlier, OSU. You really liked Milbourne. That 4.53 40, the 6.98 3-cone drill. And the 29, reps on the bench press. This guy is an animal. I think that whenever this guy comes into the league, he's going to be an immediate edge rusher and be able to get to the quarterback on almost every single play.
Can I ask why we continue comparing players that are basically identical? Look, here's a glass of chocolate milk, and over here another glass of chocolate milk. Which one's better? Look at their times. They're basically the same player. It's just a matter of which one has that intangible you like better, and that's why these draft interviews are so important for the staff inside of the ownership of all these teams in the MBL. It's determining which player will fit your system the best personality-wise, because looking at these two, looking at all the comparisons we've seen, these are basically the same player. They're just wearing different jerseys.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I like some chocolate milk, and I also like some other chocolate milk. So
I like double chocolate milk.
Yeah, if we're getting 2 glasses of chocolate milk, I think I'm okay with that.
I'm lactose intolerant, so if we get 2 glasses of chocolate milk, we're going to have a bad night.
LeChaps is not feeling good that night.
Nope.
Let's switch our focus now over to picks 17 through 24. Here we start getting into the teams that just missed the playoffs or made the playoffs and were out in the first round. So these are teams that are right there. This is a very important part of the draft, 17 through 24.
What is Doe drinking? Seriously, what is he drinking?
Sometimes I don't know.
I'm just saying, again, you can recap this all you want, but I got to jump in here and see Doe at 23 thinks the Detroit Lions are going offensive lineman. The Detroit Lions wide receiver, I'll call him university because they played like a college team last year, but I'm just saying, offensive lineman? Really? And also, in what world is Bomber and the Detroit Lions going to pick an offensive lineman whose last name he can't pronounce?
That's very true. That's a very, very
He's going to call him Kawaka Kowalski, and that's not going to go well.
Yeah, and you know that as soon as somebody gets into the backfield, he gets sacked one time, it's his fault. So he's definitely going wide receiver at 23. I don't think that's a mystery to anybody. But looking down this list, this is when you get into those players that you're really kind of looking to solidify a specific position. So this is where you start to see kind of your linebackers, your defensive ends, maybe your defensive tackles, your offensive linemen, not to the Lions, of course. But this is where you kind of start to see a little bit of a shuffle here. So if I had to ask you, Chunky, one guy here on this list that kind of stands out to you, who would you pick if you just had to pick a guy here on this list that stands out to you?
Darren Anu. He's a very good outside linebacker. He's one of the better outside linebackers in this draft, besides Milburn, the clear-cut favorite to be the best outside linebacker in this draft. I think if there's anybody on this list that stands out to me, it's definitely him.
Wrong answer. All right, OSU, we're going to ask you the same question. What player on this list stands out to you the most?
Well, let's start with there are some good players on here, and Teron Anua is a great player. But first of all, Churfy Gooch is an amazing name.
That is the correct answer.
Oh, the Goochmeister, and they have him. Gub has him going to the Tennessee Titans, which I think is a perfect fit because the Titans need some help stopping the run. And don't sleep on some of these defensive ends and defensive tackles. It's not a sexy position. There aren't a lot of teams that prioritize defensive line. But in the game, how it's developed right now, where running is becoming more prominent, the passing league has sort of backed up a step. The rushing has basically gone forward 2 steps. Defensive line is a key. And so a couple defensive ends there. I like Tavon Gold. I like Rashad Burgess. 2 guys who can come around the edge and create some havoc, not only in the backfield in the running game, but in the passing game. But seriously, if Churfy Gooch falls to the Oakland Raiders, I'm telling you right now, we're taking him just so I can have the Goochmeister on my team.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and pull up Churfy Gooch's player card here real quick. You see that,
That's not a typo, right?
That is not a typo. He is actually Churfy Gooch. He is going to be the new sex symbol of the MBL. This guy is just, he was the top defensive tackle in the 3-cone, top defensive tackle in the 20-yard shuttle. So this is a guy that's very explosive off the line. This is a guy who you're looking for, especially in a 4-3, on the inside of a 4-3. He can get off the line real quick and blow up the offensive line. I think that he's going to be a very, very good player for whoever can get him. And I mean, the name alone, I would be drafting him on the name alone because that's amazing. I've never seen a name like that.
And by far the biggest mistake anybody can make with this guy is put him at nose tackle in a 3-4 because he's not big. 6'1", 287 for a nose tackle is not big enough. But in a 4-3, put him beside anybody. I don't care if it's me out there playing defensive tackle. A full 4-7, 20-yard shuttle. You know how quick he is getting laterally, getting to those running backs, running those outside runs in the NBL today. He's strong. He may not be the biggest guy who's going to be able to plug that hole in a 3-4, but in a 4-3 with some help, look out for this guy. Look out for the Gooch in the backfield.
I completely agree. Now, Chunky, I've got a question for you. What are your thoughts on Gub having the Colts take left end Haynes Robinson and then having me take left end Haynes Robinson immediately after the Colts?
That's a bold move.
Very bold indeed. I'm stunned if somehow this plays out. The same guy going back to 2 teams, and he gets to walk the stage twice, and I think that's everybody's dream at this point.
Do you guys get just cut him in half at that point?
I think I'm going to just steal him. I don't think he's got a choice.
I think what's most interesting about this is that clearly whoever made this graphic thinks more of you taking Haynes Robinson because look at how much bigger the font is for your choice of Haynes Robinson other than the teeny tiny font the Colts take.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely getting the better Haynes Robinson in this scenario.
A much bigger, bolder, meatier Haynes Robinson.
Yeah, I've got the Haynes Robinson that everybody wants and everybody loves. I mean, that's, I think that could be, correct me if I'm wrong, but that could be the first time that the same person has been drafted by 2 teams in the same draft. I don't think that's ever happened before.
Well, are we 100% convinced that there aren't just 2 guys named Haynes Robinson who play at left end?
They have to be brothers, right?
Well, I don't know about Robinson's a pretty common name. Not everybody named Haynes Robinson, oddly enough, also related to David Robinson, the Admiral from the Sand. There are a lot of people named Robinson.
Yeah, there's so many. There's so many. Another guy here that I kind of want to touch on. He's not here on this list, but we touched on him a little bit earlier. As we're getting into the left ends and right ends, I want to touch a little bit on Rashad Burgess. This is a guy who I thought if he had a very good combine at left end, I thought that he was going to be a guy that could potentially jump up draft boards. And I think he had just that. I mean, he's very quick off the edge. He's a senior, so you're immediately getting an older, smarter, more mature player. He's got the power moves. He's got that B+ pursuit too, which is great. If you're playing the hop, power I formation, run to the middle and then bounce it outside. If you're playing that, that B+ pursuit is going to come in handy to get into the outside. Let's go ahead now and move over to
I'm sorry, there was an awkward silence. I felt like I had to say something.
Oh, I like it. I like it. I don't know.
Here's
I'm
the
not
one-
sure if Chunky's still with us or not. He might be still
might be
having
napping.
technical
Look,
difficulties, but
yeah, you guys are drinking a whole lot on this show. Seriously, stop trying to pass me vodka, guys. I'm in the middle of something. My only concern with Rashad Burgess is that B- hit power. Here in the MBL, especially the ends, they are tasked so often with taking down those more shifty running backs around the outside. And the fact that Burgess has been known more as a pursuit tackler than a big hitter, in the NBL where turnovers are so important and forcing fumbles is a big part of the game, I get concerned with Burgess as to whether or not he is going to hit hard enough to wow the scouts here for the NBL's top teams.
I mean, that's true. Yeah. I mean, and without seeing what his tackle is, same issue. If he can get to the outside, but he can't make the tackle, then we're going to have some issues. And that's not really what you're looking at, especially from an end here in the NBL. Let's go ahead now and round out our final 8 selections here in the first round. These are going to be the teams, these are the teams that made a little bit more deep runs into the playoffs. A couple teams that didn't get quite there. And then, of course, you've got the wonderful Seattle Seahawks over there at 32 winning the Super Bowl. What a great team that was.
Crap.
What a great team that was this year. I just have to throw that out there. But you look at the Browns. I don't think that Doe. I don't know what Doe was smoking when he made this. I don't think that the Browns are going to go quarterback.
Hanging out with Porter. That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Browns are still all in on Kaiser. I don't think they put any of the issues on Kaiser. When you run the ball 750 times in a season, you don't really have to worry about what your quarterback does. So it'll be interesting to see what they do go with. I think a lot of what their first 2 picks, who falls to them, is going to determine that. The Bears, OSU, I think the Bears were a very big surprise team this year, wouldn't you say?
Oh, I mean, I think I would go as far as saying the Bears were the surprise of the NBL, not only because of how well they played, and I think everybody knew that the Bears were talented enough to do well, but the way that they did it, taking away the division from the Detroit Lions, who had this stranglehold on the NFC North, getting on top of that division. I know they were disappointed that they didn't go farther in the playoffs, and it's just a matter of you once you taste that playoff atmosphere, once you figure out the pace of the playoffs, you get better the next year. But the Bears, by far, I think, were the surprise team in the NBL.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now, Chunky, looking at this list, which one of these teams, 29 through 32, which one of these last 4 teams do you think is going to benefit the most from one of the players that is put here on this mock draft?
I think possibly the Giants could, because you look at DeMarco Riley, who's considered to probably be one of the best halfbacks to come out in the last few drafts. I think last piece that they're missing on offense is a halfback, and to get a halfback of that caliber could definitely benefit them. But one pick I'll say Doe got wrong is Churfy Gooch, who is not going to the Steelers, because as we've discovered, he's going to the Raiders if he's there.
Absolutely. And we talked about DeMarco Riley earlier. Let's go ahead and pull up his combine report, because this guy immediately, without even being in the league, I think is probably one of the most sought-after running back prospects that we've had in a long time in the NBL. You look at those stats, the 40-yard dash, the 2nd overall halfback, 2nd overall in vertical jump, 3rd in broad jump, 1st in 3-cone, 1st in 20-yard shuttle. This is going to be a guy who gets off the line immediately. As soon as the ball's hiked, he's already moving and he's already trying to turn it upfield. This guy is going to be a once in a, maybe a cycle running back out of the draft. This guy can be very, very good. And if he does fall this far, I don't think he will. I don't think he's going to fall all the way down to the end of the first round. But if he does fall this far, I think that maybe a team to watch out for, could potentially be the Seahawks, if he makes it to the end, or maybe I think maybe even the Patriots. I think the Patriots could be a team to watch out for if they can get a running back of that caliber. They've got a lot of very situational and positional, halfbacks over on that team. But if they can get a true, star running back, I think that's really going to help. Obviously that offense is slower than a turtle over there, but I think that a quick running back could kind of speed them up and maybe get them a little bit quicker. They're not going to roll over on their shell quite as much.
Yeah, Yeah, I don't buy the Seahawks. They love Thomas Rawls. They love Thomas Rawls. Seriously, owner Kyle has a poster of Thomas Rawls on his ceiling that he can look at when he wakes up every morning. They're not going running back at 32. They're going to fill some sort of need. I buy the Patriots at 31 because some sort of speedy running back with that Patriots offense to take some pressure off of Tom Brady, especially as we saw how poorly they passed the ball late in the season, could be a big boost to that team. Don't sleep on the Chicago Bears. I know they have Jordan Howard, but a talent that if he happens to fall this low, which I think there's no way he does, but if he happens to fall this low, look out for Chicago at 26. They're looking for a big time playmaker to take some pressure off of Mitch Trubisky, and I think he could definitely thrive in Chicago.
Yeah, I completely agree. I definitely think that he could thrive in Chicago. I'm just not sure if they're ready to give up on Jordan Howard yet. But if he does go to the Patriots, Chunky, would you say that this offense could kind of come out of its shell a little bit?
I think it's possible, but one thing I want to say is I agree with OSU on this, that I don't see that there's any way that he falls this far. And one thing I want to say that our draft experts got correct is that if he does happen to fall this far, which, like I said, I don't think he will not go past the Giants.
Yeah, I can see that happening. But I also don't know if the Giants are willing to go ahead and take a running back when they are so pass heavy. So it'll be interesting to see how much scheme kind of plays a factor when you get into these late picks. You don't want to be a team that, you know, if you're a passing team and you know you're going to pass the ball a lot, and you have, you know, maybe a glaring issue at tight end or a glaring issue at the offensive line, or maybe you're not getting any pressure on the quarterback. I'm not sure if you're a passing team, if you want to go ahead and draft a running back, because at that point you're taking the ball out of your playmaker's hands. The Giants, in this case, it's Odell Beckham. You're taking the ball out of his hands. You're giving him less touches per game, and I think that could have kind of a reverse effect. I don't think that's going to be as healthy. So without any, you know, that's going to wrap up what we had here. Do you guys have any kind of final remarks or anything you guys would like to touch on before we go?
Can I get some liquor on MBL Live? Because you guys have fun over here on Blitz. You guys don't shy
We have a
away.
good time.
Yeah, you don't shy away from the hooch here on MBL Live, on MBL Blitz, and on MBL Live. I'd say let's get the hooch over there, but we saw what happens when Sonny gets his hand on a bottle and it's not pretty.
Yeah, and I know you said hooch, but I think you really meant cooch, because I think that's the guy we're all talking about over here.
There's always cooch on MBL Live, man. There's always cooch.
All right, guys. Thanks for coming on today. That's going to do it for our mock draft special. Be sure to tune in tomorrow night for our Season 27 draft, as OSU is obviously going to be taking over and giving what might be probably one of our most exciting shows of the season. OSU, do you have anything to say to all the viewers about what we might see maybe tomorrow at the draft?
Oh, well, if you haven't tuned into any of our rookie drafts in the past, first of all, head over to the network under the rookie drafts. You can check out any of our past rookie drafts, full pick-by-pick analysis for the first 32 picks. And if TFA is on the show, you can watch him incorrectly pick each and every one, folks. That's right. We've got the odds at 2-1 that TFA will incorrectly pick every single one. And that is, it's really a feat how good you are at being wrong.
Yeah, 2-1. Those are pretty good odds. I'd probably take that. Yeah. I'm a betting man. I'd probably take those odds. I definitely don't think I'll probably get a single pick right if it's anything like the team selection show.
I just imagine you're going to hedge and just pick Chirfy Gooch for every team. Eventually, someone's going to take him.
Yeah, I mean, if I just pick the same player and I just say that name over and over and over again, surely I've got to get 1 out of 32, right? I feel like at that point, teams might just pass on him solely so that I'm not able to get one right, and they're going to take him in the second round. I feel like that's what would happen.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. And I'm very excited for this season's draft. Lots of, because this is our first season of this cycle, our first rookie draft, these are players that you're going to get to see throughout the next couple of seasons. Really, though, I'll be honest, the most exciting thing is if you missed some of our other rookie drafts, in our last one, we had, TFA, do you remember a guy by the name of Bryant Dingle?
Yes, I do.
Yes, we had Dingle Watch 2017. In this draft, it's definitely going to be Gooch Watch 2017, so that should be fun.
Oh, yeah, we're definitely watching the Gooch and seeing how that plays out. It's definitely going to be a fun show, and a big shout out to all the guys that do the graphics. Big shout out to JY for doing the graphics for this show, and a big shout out to everybody that does the graphics and has been working hard on all of the graphics that you're going to see here tomorrow night in the draft. You know, we have a lot of graphics on these podcasts, but that one particular episode, our draft show every year, really sets the bar, and it really goes above and beyond anything that we could do here. So, you know, thank you guys for watching the MBL Blitz mock draft special. We'll see you guys tomorrow night here on the MBL Network as we see who gets that next big game changer.